firstly, I wanted to say thank you to everyone for coming. I think this is a hugely important meeting, and I think we need many, many more meetings of this kind talking about this problem in all the different parts of my constituency and the borough, because we need to take it out there to the communities that are experiencing this, that are being affected, and speak, as Jackie said, to the young people who are living daily with a threat of serious violence and often carrying weapons themselves, often out of fear. But any solution must start with the young people who are living this on a daily basis. It can't just be a discussion for councillors, for MPs, for academics, for experts. Got to get out there and talk to the young people being affected. It's a serious, serious problem. I think serious youth violence is the best term for it, but it is mainly, as we know, while gun crime is on the rise, is mainly we're talking about knife crime here. And we have had, and I put this to the Home Office Minister just a few days ago in the Commons, we've had 5 stabbings of young men here in just over a month. And I fear, because it always does in some sense, that things may get worse over the summer. We've got the long summer nights rolling in, and there's a hype in the area, I think, that these incidents are happening, and therefore people are more likely to carry weapons, and that's where our fear comes from. And I've asked the Home Secretary what can be done in the very short term in terms of short-term funding for prevention diversionary programmes to help ensure that we don't have a summer of escalating violence. The causes of this are incredibly complex. I don't pretend to be an expert. Partly, I think police cuts have made the job harder, but as I said to Simon just the other day, there's a recognition, I think, amongst all the different parts of London affected by this, that you can't simply police your way out of this problem. If Simon had 100, 200, 300 more officers, we wouldn't solve the problem completely. There are very deep and complex causes to this. In the cutbacks in some services, particularly youth services, but also mental health support, probation, lots of other social services, but in the wider context of deprivation, poverty, inequality, the causes are manifest. And I am very taken, as I think a lot of MPs are, by the need to see this in the round and take a public health approach to try and make some long-term progress towards it. I'll just finish by saying, however we do this, as a community, we need to do this together and take action, because we cannot go on seeing young lives wasted in the way they're doing. Each of those 5 stabbings is a young person whose life will be forever altered by that experience, even if they're just seriously injured. But in many cases, we're talking about lives lost. And it's not just those people. That is a mother who is grieving, a father, brother, sister, and a community, as I know from people who write to me all the time, that is scared and traumatised by what is going on. So I think this is a great start. I hope we can expand it further. Danny, I'll be there to support, but thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you, Matt. And Simon?
I'm not going to risk this falling down in a minute, so I'm going to sit. There's 5 things I'd like to say, really. The first, well, in fact, 6 things. The first thing is that I sit in front of you today as your borough commander as far as the police. And I'd echo the point that Matt made around the fact that we will not police our way out of this problem. In the same way as we will not police our way out of issues such as domestic abuse. We know that by the time someone comes to us to report a domestic abuse incident, they would have suffered it anything from 15 to 20, 30 times. By the time it gets to us, we'll be able to enforce the law around it, but is that solving the problem? So the key point, first point I would make is that we have a pivotal role to play, but we are only part of the solution. So the 5 key points I'd like to make really. First one is that what we need as the police is we need a clear mandate from communities to actively use enforcement in a legitimate way. So there's a lot of talk about stop and search. People think knife crime, use stop and search solves the problem. Actually, it's just one tool of many, but as long as we use it proportionally, we use it intelligence-led, then it's a very, very effective power. But we do need the legitimacy to be able to do that. And in the past, we've seen the pendulum swing backwards and forwards in relation to the appetite for use of stop and search as just one tool amongst many. So we need a mandate from the communities for us to use the legislation, because there's a whole raft of legislation we can use, and some of it is quite draconian, and some of it just doesn't actually meet what the user requires. The second point is that we need to work with partners, and we work effectively with partners now, but we need to just refresh that and look again at how well we work with partners, how well we share information, the timeliness of that, the accuracy of that and what we do with it. Because the reality is we're only as good as what we know. The third point is around encouraging and empowering communities to provide us with the information. Now, if we see something happen on the streets, quite often you will see a flood of yellow jackets to try and provide reassurance and to try and make sure we put a lid on anything further happening. But that is a highly effective but very short-term use of resources, and they are scarce resources and they're becoming more scarce. So the best way to police is to know what's going to happen before it happens, or to know what has happened and be able to effectively and immediately intervene and put a lid on it. And that way we can use minimal resources and we can use them in the most effective and quickest way. But that relies upon information which we then assess, which turns into intelligence. If someone goes out and stabs someone, more than that one person will know what's happened. And yet we routinely struggle to find out what's happened. Even from people who have been stabbed, we don't get that feedback, we don't get that information. Now, either that's a huge lack of trust and confidence in the police, or is a culture of not wanting to tell, or people feeling that they want to take the retribution into their own hands, whatever it may be, but the problem is we're missing a trick by not having that information and intelligence. The other 2 points I just want to cover off is really around what the community can do to help yourselves, and that's around what I call active citizenship. And this is a term that's been coined a number of times, going back a number of years, because actually active citizenship has existed since we've had Neighbourhood Watch, for instance. That's active citizenship, people looking out for each other. So we need to get better at that. One of the frustrations that I have is when I see 3 to 4 cops on any given day rooting around in bushes looking for knives that have been laid down. And we find the knives and we recover them and we forensicate them, we see what intelligence we can gain from them. But that's 3 or 4 cops that are spent looking through bushes. Actually, these are your communities, these are your areas. So what I'd rather see is one police officer coordinate the activity of members of that community in looking for those knives, because anyone can go in the bush and find a knife. That's then 3 officers that are then released from that to go and do activity for which they can use their training and their skills. And the last one really is just how we can start to look at reviewing what we've done in a more timely way and make sure that we learn from what we have done. Because a lot of the time we will go over and over what we've done before, and sometimes we miss a trick, sometimes we use what's worked effectively, but we just need to become better at that. Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks Simon.